This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com, Steve Beck from Sirius and XM's At the Races. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. A little snow frosted.
Yeah, I knew it had to come back.
Frosted flakes this morning on Loose on the Lead.
Yeah, the refrigerator temperatures are supposed to come back this week too, which I'm not
Is that
happy
right?
about. Oh, yeah,
I'm not paying
all week long, down in the
attention.
teens.
Go to Florida.
But yeah, we live vicariously through watching Florida yesterday. The racing, obviously, big day down at New Orleans. Tampa's always fun to watch. Gulfstream with the Good Sunshine Millions Day. But then all eyes in the racing world focused on Florida, South Florida last night. The announcement of the Eclipse Awards. And Steve, I don't think there were any real surprises. The category that was going to attract some attention for me was that jockey category with a number of the published ballots that had been out there. Limited sample, but a number of them had Gary Stevens on top. I thought Javier Castellano on the numbers was going to attract a lot of attention, and sure enough, Castellano winds up to be the winner. The other one that was maybe slight surprise, maybe, but shared belief being the two-year-old male winner was maybe a little bit of a surprise. I mean, it's not a shock.
I thought there was a real, obviously he had a big shot, but I got to say, I didn't vote for him, and I don't particularly relish the concept that a horse is named the two-year-old champion without a start on dirt. And the debut at Golden Gate, and then the futurity and the win in the Hollywood Preview, he didn't beat anybody. And yes, he did it, flashily and all that, and got big figs. But to me, the horses that mixed it up, leading up to the Breeders' Cup, and then the Breeders' Cup runners, particularly Havana, and then, of course, New Year's Day. I'm sure New Year's Day got hurt by having to retire off the injury, but I didn't buy the whole share belief hype machine. Granted, he very well may go on to be a great three-year-old, but I'm dubious about the fact that he's acknowledged as the best three-year-old male. I didn't agree.
Yeah, it was one of those where the category seemed to be contentious, and it was I'm just looking down the list, it was the closest final. The first place vote, shared belief 115, New Year's Day 99, so it was the closest of the votes. And as I say, maybe a little bit of a surprise. But then you go down the rest of the list. She's a Tiger, two-year-old female. A three-year-old male, Will Take Charge. Three-year-old filly, Beholder. Older male, Wise Dan. Older female, Royal Delta. Sprinter points off the bench, female sprinter, Groupie. Male turf, Wise Dan. Female turf, Dank. Steeplechase horse, Divine Fortune. Horse of the Year, Wise Dan. So he winds up with 3 trophies.
Which, again, a repeat of last year. And to me, this is an issue, and we've been bringing it up, talking on the radio, that it's time for some guidelines in terms of the various categories. In particular, the elder male. I mean, the elder male is supposed to be a dirt horse first, principally a dirt router. And to give these 3 trophies 2 years in a row to Wise Dan, it's a little bit of overkill. Turf horse, okay, fine. Horse of the Year, I agree, I voted for him. But the macho mans of the world and the Game On Dude and, even Flat Out, I mean, any of those kinds of horses, those are the elder male. The traditional older male champion is is the dirt category. There's already a turf horse category.
Yeah,
I don't
and
get it.
that's why it would
Yeah,
make
it's too
sense to
much.
have some guidelines, because in a year like this, you give no recognition to the dirt older male.
That's
You
not
give
right.
recognition to the turf male, but you don't give recognition to the dirt male. So I would have no problem if they did kind of parse that out a little more. And in the human categories, again, no surprises there. Ken and Sarah Ramsey, both owners and breeders award. Todd Pletcher's the trainer. Again, Castellano is the jockey and apprentice jockey, Victor Carrasco. I looked over the breakdown of the votes, and as always, there's always some years, there was a few head scratchers in there. Older female, there was a first place vote for Brandy Secret, who never stepped out of Starter Allowance Company all year long. In the owner category, Jungle Racing and Maggie Moss both got first place votes, one for each of them. Trainers category, David Jacobson gets a vote, King Leatherberry, Dale Romans each got a first place vote. Down in the jockey category, Corey Nakatani got a first place vote. Again, it happens every year. There's somebody out there in a few of these categories who makes some votes that just leave you scratching your head a little.
And of course, I'll reiterate the outlandish omission of authenticity and the fact that she only received 12 second place votes and just a handful of third place votes. It's an embarrassment that people who are supposed to be watching the game on a serious basis, just because her statistics weren't in a package that was sent out, it's amazing. And there's some issues with the way this thing is handled. The first place vote is the only important vote, so to speak, because that's what determines your category winner. So from that standpoint, everything else behind it is window dressing. You would think people are taking it seriously. There's some votes in here that, when it's broken out, if you haven't seen the composite results, that really are embarrassing. I don't know how else to put it. That people, if you want, I use the third place vote frequently as a way to acknowledge a less identified candidate. For instance, I voted for Tom Proctor third in trainer because Proctor had another spectacular year with just a set group of horses, and he's never going to be an eclipse-winning trainer because he doesn't have enough stock and he doesn't start the kinds of numbers of horses that the Dale Romans and the Todd Pletchers, the Chad Browns, and the Bob Bafferts have. But it's just a tip of the cap, basically, to use your term. And other than that, when people are not noticing who's running all season long in races, in divisions, then either fix this across the board, or I don't know, either take it more seriously or bow out. I love the ones, I love the people also that said, Jenny Reese, who I think the world of. Jenny Reese tweeted last night that the steeplechase should be handed over to a steeplechase committee. What? I would be, personally, as a huge steeplechase fan and somebody who really, who watches it all year long, including the racing in Georgia and the Carolinas and up the coast of Pennsylvania and throughout the year, I would be offended, actually. If you don't understand steeplechase and aren't watching it, just abstain. But to say that, it should be just turned over to a steeplechase committee, that's a little myopic too.
And I'm just looking down here. Voter abstentions in the steeplechase category, 52. And I don't get it, because if you go to the NSA, the National Steeplechase website, all the videos are on there. So you can look up all the information, you can watch all the races, and certainly as a horse racing pundit, most of us should be well-versed enough in the sport to be able to watch the races and make those kind of decisions. I'm with you. As a steeplechase fan myself, I'm amazed every year it's like this, the folks who step away and don't make a vote. But particularly now with the internet, you can watch all the races and plug in.
Jay Pribman's going to be with us later. Jay writes, of course, the recap and covered the Eclipse last night for the Daily Racing Forum. He's staying on in Florida leading up to this week's Holy Bull. So we'll check in with Jay. We'll get his Eclipse recap at about the 45 mark. Mike Welch is going to join us in about 5 minutes from Gulfstream to talk about yesterday's action. And in addition to, of course, Sunshine Millions, Mucho Macho Man is going to have to try to campaign himself into finally maybe get himself an award somehow this year. Although now Wise Dan, Charlie Lopresti and Mr. Fink talking about campaigning him long on the dirt as well. So maybe this year we'll get a very interesting mix, and who knows, Wise Dan could point for the end of the year toward the Breeders' Cup Classic. But we'll talk to Jay and we'll talk to Mike later this morning.
And just before we move on from these, the 2-3-year-old categories, filly and male, were both interesting, so I'll parse out the votes for you. 3-year-old male, it was clearly Will Take Charge. 231 first-place votes, 15 for Orb, 1 each, Palace, Malice, Golden Sense, and Verrazano. And no surprise, it only came down to 2 horses in the 3-year-old filly, but it was pretty clearly Beholder. She got 207 first-place votes compared to 42 for Princess of Silmar. So that's how those 3-year-old categories broke out. Some of the news from the past week, Dr. Scott Palmer gets appointed as the medical director for New York Racing, essentially. And to me, it's analogous, if folks watch racing nationally, to what Mary Scalay does down in Kentucky. It's a similar type of overseeing of the racing from a medical standpoint in New York.
Tremendous addition. He's going to be on the radio with me on Wednesday or Tuesday, and looking forward to it. Scott Palmer was part of the group that was involved in the Aqueduct Intertrack situation 2 winters ago. He is a fabulous hire for the state of New York, and he'll set a high standard in that position.
And we should also mention a TV alert for people. You'll be able to watch it on channel 169 in this area via Time Warner, the Esquire TV series Horse Players, which on Racing Across America every week on Tuesday I have Gary Johnson from Beulah Park on, who is a former trainer out there, and he was a very good trainer in the Midwest, and now he's shifted over, does the handicapping for Beulah Park, but he travels around and goes to the handicapping contests, and he talks a lot every week about those with us as he goes to the various contests. And he said during the year, a lot of times he'd come on and say the cameras were there, and he may have had to sign a release because he got in some of the shots. And he said it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, and there's been a lot of prep out for it this week. And I know you had some of the folks on your radio show. Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Premieres Tuesday night, the Esquire TV network.
10 o'clock, and you can go to Esquire's website as well, esquire.com, and you'll actually see all their programming. They're kind of gearing up and adding things. They got a crazy show about Pee Wee football. That is, I tell you what, it's frightening. It's scary. I was really in Texas, of course, and they're out there recruiting 4-year-olds scouting 4-year-olds for size and speed to get them on the 7, 8, 9-year-old Pee Wee football team. It is wild. You think about the toddlers and tiaras with the pageants, with the pageant parents. Watch this crazy show on Esquire TV. It is scary what they're, you got kids, it's 7-year-olds with concussions. It's really disturbing, actually. I was amazed. Speaking of disturbing, this is a positive flip side of disturbing, because the president, terrific piece of news for anti-slaughter advocates. The situation in the bill, the financing was blocked to the USDA. Without funding for the USDA inspection service, the slaughter plants that want to open up in Wyoming and in Iowa and in Texas, the slaughter plants can't open if the USDA isn't there to inspect the meat and inspect the process. And successfully put into a bill that the president signed on Friday. So the creeps involved in horse slaughter, they have to go regroup. Now, this is not to say that it's a completely great picture, because at the same time, it's no bargain having horses sent to Canada and to Mexico either. That's a problem. But at least in the United States, again, for a while now, we'll be able to come up with some options, but it won't be slaughter in the U.S., in the continental states.
All right, before we go to the break, you want to bring up the Betfair and
Yes.
New Jersey
Yes.
topic?
If you didn't catch the visit I had Wednesday with Dennis Drazen, who of course is the attorney from New Jersey who helped spearhead the group that has taken over at Monmouth Park, they put a deal together that is going to pave the way for exchange wagering. It will only be in New Jersey this summer, and it's only for New Jersey residents. But this is a very important development that could, at the very least, be a test tube, a petri dish for the potentiality of widespread application of exchange wagering throughout the country. There's a lot of people who've clamored for it for years, who have watched what happens at Betfair in the UK, and they think it's a great source potentially of revenue over and above the mutual pools. This will be a great test, and you would think by either opening day or not close thereafter, or close thereafter, we'll see exchange wagering opportunities in New Jersey, and the industry will watch it very closely.
I've said it before, it scares me because essentially people are making money from horses losing, and I think the attractiveness of it is you can lock in odds, and I think there are probably other ways to do that. And so
There's
the Stan Bergstein.
Right, the Stan Bergstein model, which is which is fixed odds wagering as a pari-mutuel bet. However, the exchanges, I'm not worried about malfeasance or nefarious activity.
And also,
there's very little of that's gone on in the UK.
But also, it can also act as a protection mechanism. They can look at the printouts and kind of see if there's hanky-panky using that model too. So I mean, there's both sides of that. All right, we'll take our first break. When we come back, Mike Welch from the Daily Racing Form, the Florida correspondent. We'll talk a little Florida racing with Mike right after this.
I'm Brian Nadeau, inviting you to join me Friday, January 24th at the Clubhouse Racebook. I'll be handicapping the day's races live and managing a $500 bankroll for 25 lucky patrons. We'll see you then. Let's win together.
This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Go Sepper kicking clear, and Go Sepper is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
We're back on Loose on the Lead on this Sunday morning. We'll dive straight into the action from Saturday and look forward to the rest of the weekend, which of course includes Monday racing at all the major ovals. Mike Welch was on hand yesterday for the Sunshine Millions. But boy, even though Mucho Macho Man was pretty spectacular, the big 111 buyer, the horse I want to talk about first, Mike, is Tonalist.
Yeah, no, that was a great effort. I mean, he had run well the first time out, and I'd heard he had always trained well in New York. I had never seen him train. But yeah, I mean, he looped the field and just drew off impressively. So, Christophe Clement's got himself a dirt horse, it looks like.
9 furlongs, and if you hadn't seen the fig, it's a 90 buyer for Tonalist. This is yet another Tapit. And the part of this that actually is a really nice sidebar, not only Clement, yes, with a dirt horse, how about Joe Bravo potentially latching on to what could turn into a classic horse?
Yeah, I know. I mean, Joe's had a great meet. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's riding in good form, and besides all the stakes races he won over the last couple of weeks, now this. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, you win your maiden in the middle of January, you're a little bit behind the 8 ball, but it was a mile and an eighth, so that helps.
Let's talk about Mucho Macho Man, and of course a certain school would say that we'd all have preferred to see him point for the Don handicap. Maybe there's still a chance that 3 weeks down they might, if he's doing great, go in. Talk about what you saw. It was obviously a paid workout.
Right, that's exactly what I wrote, a paid workout, and he did what he was supposed to do. He did it easily. What can you say about it? He ran fast, though, for a horse that really wasn't asked for his best, and a horse that's been off and probably not 100%, ready to go yesterday. So, I think Kathy had to be very, very pleased, not only with the effort, the fact that he didn't take a lot out of him, obviously. I spoke to them last night a couple hours later at the dinner, and they said he came back just fine, which is good. I said, what a difference a year makes. Last year at the Eclipse Award dinner, they were the whole team there was nervously wondering, if anything was really amiss with the horse after the poor effort here in the slop. Fortunately, by the next day, it looked like he was doing fine. But by the time they were sitting down for dinner, a couple hours after the Sunshine Classic last year, they didn't know what was going on with Mucho Macho Man. But this was a different story, and now he can move on to his next start. I doubt they'll go to the Dawn. I know this was an easy effort, but Kathy's not one to bring him back in 3 weeks off his first start of the year. They've mentioned some options, including Dubai, but I think, like I said on some of the other shows, and maybe to you guys, if you put a gun to my head and make me bet, I'd say Santa Anita handicap.
Well, in addition, of course, to the Classic, the rest of that card, there was actually some very contentious races. And, Mike, let's talk about what went on in the turf. This was probably the best matchup of top to bottom in terms of the lineup. And, gosh, Star Channel, nice for Eddie Keneally to win this race. Old Time Hockey, I thought, ran a whale of a race from the difficult outside post. And, boy, the more I watched the quasi head-on, the more it felt like Star Channel was coming in and leaning on Old Time Hockey.
I totally disagree with you. If you watch it again, Gary Stevens hits Old Time Hockey left-handed. Both riders are hitting left-handed. And Gary Stevens precipitates it. I thought the stewards 100% made the right call.
Interesting, because when they come together at first, and then they separate, and then, Gary comes back and they come together again, but then before the wire, it sure felt like Star Channel was inhibiting him with his neck sort of in front and leaning.
Gary had already precipitated all the bumping with his left hand. Gary hit him left-handed. If Gary had hit him right-handed and tried to keep him straight, but he came out into him first and started the whole thing, and then they're just pinballing off each other. I didn't hear too many people disagree with it here in the stands, and I thought they made the right call.
Interesting. All right, I'm not going to argue with you on that. Let's also mention Bad Debt. I think Rosario, he seemed like he left Bad Debt with way too much to do. I was surprised he was so far back on the backstretch.
No, I agree with you there. This horse never runs a bad race, and he didn't run a bad race yesterday, but yeah, you were right. He had a little bit too much ground to make up once he got into gear, and third place to finish again. This horse has had a lot of close calls and only one win over the long haul here, but you got to be proud of a horse like that. That just tries for a 7-year-old, just tries every single time he's out there.
Let's talk about the two filly races, both the distaff and the sprint. And it was interesting. Ullapool, of course, had everything her own way on the front end in the sprint because Our Free Roll did not break well, had a problem right at the break of the gate, and so Ullapool lopes along. My pal Chrissy, I thought, put in a nice run there under Gonzalez and was threatening, but Lascano let out Ullapool another notch. And then, of course, good decision by Todd Pletcher to run Sweet and Discreet in the distaff, go the 9 furlongs, and she has no trouble with the distance.
Yeah, he must have known Toasting wasn't going to show up. And I wouldn't say he didn't have any trouble with the distance. I mean, actually, after she put Devil's Cave away. Devil's Cave was actually coming back at her again. I think they were both laboring a little bit. Toasting, on her best day, should have run them down, but she didn't look like she just was into her game yesterday, and she had no kick at all. So sweet and discreet, but it was a great decision by Todd. And I think Maital Christie is tailing off a little bit. She ran well, but and Ullapool did have everything her own way. But she did come up. She hung a little bit. It looked like she was going to go by her. Same thing she did in the race before. Kind of the same thing she did in her last work, which I wasn't crazy about. Just wasn't her. So maybe she's run one too many times. She's still a nice filly. She ran another good race, but again, just didn't have the kick at the end that she needed.
Other than the fabulous strike, Rebo Bobo is just remarkable, and here he wins again. And this was a terrific performance, and it never looked at any point like Rebo Bobo was going to be threatened.
No, Jesus, what a story he is. He's almost as good a story on that card yesterday as Mucho Macho Man. 11 wins in his last 12 starts, and like you said, he just had everything in control all the way. I agree with you. At no point did it look like anybody was going to threaten him, and nice effort by Happy My Way, who's vastly improved right now to get up for second, but Rebo Bobo dominated. None of the closers showed up at all in that race.
Mike, before I turn you over to Seth, I also got to mention the nightcap, because talking about somebody who just continues to get horses ready to run big, Charlie A., Michelle Nihe, and I wanted to kill myself. In the Clockers report, you made it very clear, you and Mike Vesey made it very clear that Charlie A. had been working well, this Curlin filly, and she, certainly was one of the ones that you had to think about. But I thought with the post outside going 7.5 and a field of fairly accomplished horses that were better positioned, I thought, how can she win this? Son of a gun, 17, almost 18 to 1.
Yeah, what a great performance. Michelle can get them ready and have them ready to go first time off the bench. I got to tip my hat to her as well. The post position, I usually don't look at these horses on the outside going 7.5. Even Miss Lack, I tried to pick against her because she was breaking in post 10, and that inclination was correct because she didn't fire at all. But I agree with you. Give Michelle Nihe all the credit in the world for Charlie A. Obviously a nice filly, and we'll probably hear more from her down the road.
Mike, I want to go back to Thursday. I was in here handicapping Gulfstream that day, and I picked a couple of maidens on top, hoping to get a price. They both came in. The price got sucked out of both of them. But more than special for Joan Scott, filly facing the boys. I understand she had tried to get in a race the day before, didn't make it in, so wound up against the boys and got it done. And then at the end of the day, it was Anmott for Karen McLaughlin. What did those two look like?
No, I agree with you. I thought the Joan Scott horse looked interesting, but always a little worried fillies against the boys. But going 5A sometimes it's not as big a deal, and she had the mile race under her belt, and that kind of helped the cause there at the end when she looked like she was passed and had another gear to come back on again. So 5 to 1, I was a little lower than I thought she would be, but. I have a buddy of mine who's a pretty good handicapper, and the night before he told me, don't overlook this horse, bet a few bucks on her. I didn't listen, but he was correct. And Anmott, Kieran laid it in where she could win, or he could win. 4-year-old gelding, first time out, but first time Lasix, and obviously this horse must have some issues to run for 40 the first time, but you put him at the right level and get him fit enough, you get good results.
Yeah, 12 to 1 on the morning line for both of them. One pays 10, one pays 13. Happy to catch the tickets, but I lost a little of my value there off the morning line, and I want to get some opinion today. I was on the handicapping show earlier doing Gulfstream again this morning, and that 6th race today, I want to get your opinion there because I think you can make a case for probably about 8 out of the 9 on breeding and connections. So I want to know if maybe you saw something, the workouts in the morning, and I'll mention one in my mix was She's Justified. If we get that 10 to 1, this is a sibling to Dance to Bristol, so that 10 to 1 looks very, very generous for She's Justified. But in the 6th today, what were your thoughts?
I just really didn't know which way to go in here. From the Clocker reports that I got from Mike on Sloan Square, who, probably will be the favorite just because it's Todd with a first-time starter. I just thought that maybe not his best or one of his best half dozen, just from reading the reports on the work. So I kind of was leaning against her. Richie's Red Hot Honey is trained okay here, not fantastic, but she's got a little speed, and it's Wesley first time out going 5.5. So I kind of leaned in that direction, but I agreed with you on she's justified it. She is a half to Dance to Bristol, and on just the breeding alone, I took her work reports. It just seemed okay, nothing special, but that was my second choice. I went 3-5, just looking for a little value. Mike also had a good report on Love This Kitty for Michael Matz, had a decent work, and I think also for Creative Spirit. So pretty wide open race if you want to take a shot to beat Sloan Square.
Mike, before we wrap it up, let me also ask you about today's feature. You've got the Kitten's Joy. These are the 3-year-old boys on the grass leading up toward the graded stakes. And, of course, a lot of these horses may end up pointing toward the bluegrass. That's been the M.O. the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fairly wide open race. Storming Indian, We Miss Artie will be favored. Probably We Miss Artie will be the slight choice coming out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Interesting to note on the work tab, and I didn't ask Todd, but the We Miss Artie missed 5 weeks of work from December 1st to January 7th, but then came back with a huge work. So, you know, you got to keep him in the mix. Storming Indy, you know, ran well on a surface is probably not his favorite surface to win the pulpit, but this is a tougher field here, and he might have a little, get entertained a little on the front end. I took Cabo Cat. I was really impressed with the run he made behind Mr. Speaker last time. He lost considerable ground on the turn and still came on to pass everybody but Mr. Speaker. No one was going to beat him that day. So if he can get some kind of a trip, the rail draw may or may not be an advantage for him because with his closing style, he's going to have to work his way through the field. But I just took a shot with Cable Cat over the 2 logical horses.
Finally, for tomorrow, and of course, we've got good Monday racing across the country, and you look at that third race, all eyes, I think, will be on Kelly Breen's Shogun Samurai, the filly coming back off that big maiden win. Here's our boy Joe Bravo again.
Yeah, I mean, you know, she'd be the horse to beat, I guess, but, you know, I think that race even surprised Kelly a little bit, that she made the lead like she did in the field. It looked like a pretty good field, and the horses that were supposed to fire didn't fire. You know, we'll see if she repeats, if somebody looks her in the eye this time. I took a shot with Michael Matz, who's in town, class of the field, along with True Blue Nation. Looks like he's been training well up there. He's got an outside post. I thought maybe if if who's in town can, get right on Shogun Samurai and make her work a little bit, that maybe the class will out. So that's who I took in there, but again, not with a lot of confidence. She is coming off a little bit of a layoff. There's also the notable 8th race where there is some pedigree, including Gala Award coming back for Todd Pletcher and Coolmore. This one a half to Stormello, and obviously the horse to beat. I think this horse is probably the best bet of the day. This horse ran exceptionally well first time out, but wound up chasing a loose on the lead horse who was well met as well that day. Not on the board, but certainly coming over there. That horse had already, I believe, had a race under its belt, and Gala Reward couldn't catch. But I like the way he was reaching out at the end. I like the way he galloped out. So everything being equal, Gala Reward, I think, is going to be a short price winner in here. The one horse I thought that was interesting and came out of the same race, coming back in against this horse, is Kieran McLaughlin's horse. Good Response, who get Lasix for the first time, had post 13 that day, really had a rough trip all the way around, and now with that race under its belt, and especially with the Lasix, I think this horse has, if anyone has a chance of upsetting Gala Reward. But I thought that was a good race all around, and I think the 2 horses coming out of the race are the dominant players in here. Also might mention Soul Train in here for New York people, because Phil Serpe sends this one. This is the first foal out of I Lost My Chew, the nice multiple stake winning New York bred mare, and one of the few Flying Z horses that are still running under the Flying Z moniker. So a terrific card today out of the Sunshine Millions, and then of course a Monday card. Mike, thank you so much. My pleasure, guys. Have a good one. We're going to stay right here, I think, because Andy Serling of the New York Racing Association standing by. And speaking of nice cards, Sunday and then into Monday, same is true. And in fact, I think the card tomorrow in New York might be the best racing anywhere in the country. Andy, good morning.
How many cups of coffee you had this morning?
I've had a gigantic cup of Dunkin' Donuts, and then earlier at home, at least 3.
Seth, you got a word in today yet?
No.
I don't drink coffee, so I'm at a
No, have you
disadvantage.
been able to speak, though, at all during the show?
I'm at a huge disadvantage.
He speaks the whole first show before me, so I think I'm doing him a favor by talking over him.
I think he's getting wound up while he's talking.
Andy, good morning, and we're coming back off a day yesterday where there were a couple of pretty notable performances. Let's start, first of all, with the stake.
Yeah, I was surprised what a big speed figure it got, but I guess the first two finishers finished over a dozen lengths ahead of the third horse. Percussion's okay when he's able to dictate on the front end, and Long River got himself in good position, and certainly his post helped him, but they both got very good trips, and they buried the other horses. I mean, they showed up, and nobody else did. Where they go from here remains to be seen. I don't think they'll get too ambitious with Percussion. When they've tried to get more ambitious with him, it's, had mixed results. He was second to Brooklyn. As far as Long River, we'll see. It's a long year. I don't think anybody is in a hurry to get anything done, unless you're pointing for the Don, or you're thinking of shipping out to California for the big cap, which I would be surprised if they did. Big races really start more towards the middle of the year. I mean, you do have races like the Oakland Park Handicap, the Pimlico Special, but they're not Grade 1. So, we'll see what people do. But certainly, both those horses showed up and ran well.
Absolutely, and putting the blinkers back on with Percussion, I think, helped a little bit. And you got to think that Irad Ortiz was smart to stay in contact with the leader.
Well, it was obvious, that there wasn't an enormous amount of pace in the race, and especially with Saratoga Snacks opting to run in an easier spot today. He had no choice, and plus, drawing the rail makes it very, very easy. And he's not slow, Long River. I mean, they took him back a couple starts ago, but he's obviously a horse that has the ability to put himself in position.
Let's quickly talk about one of the maiden races from yesterday, maybe a couple of them, because USS O'Brien finally gets over, and I don't know, this doesn't feel like a 3-year-old that's really going anywhere particularly big.
No, I think she could spend some serious time, though, in the non-winners of ones.
As a bet against there, too?
Yeah, she's just not very good. Horses are what they are, but I suppose any horse can improve. But she's sort of shown herself to be a relative mediocrity in the races she's run.
Well, and, my inclination yesterday was to try to, go against her after a bunch of off,
Really, in that field?
Well, because you get the feeling like those horses, when they start with those seconds and thirds, you think they're going to find a way to lose.
There was nobody in. Well, that's not wholly fair. I think she's just been a little overbet in her races. I mean, her prior race was a perfectly fine effort. The horse that beat her was a respectable second-time starter from Bill Mott, who had every right to improve. I mean, she was running against relative nobodies. I mean, she certainly wasn't as embarrassing in her defeats as the second-place finisher yesterday had been in her prior start, where she had a race wrapped up. And I mean, I know she lost to a firster that took some money, but she's not that good either, and the others just weren't competitive. I mean, I think 2-5 was ridiculously low on her. Don't get me wrong, but she ran her usual race. She ran the same 74 Beyer, which is sort of right in the middle of where she's been running her races lately. She's just not that good.
Going to also ask you about that crazy maiden race that started the pick 4, the 6th, because the board was a little bit all over the place. There were some really interesting firsters, and it ended up being the George Weaver with that Saratoga Shoes. But that was one of those crazy groups that you sort of had to read tea leaves, I guess, to some extent.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there were 2 expensive 2-year-old purchases in the race, and one of them didn't take any money, and Maggie didn't like it in the paddock, and then the other one she liked, and it won, and the other got bet. And the only thing sort of odd, I think, about that race was the amount of money that came in for the David Jacobson horse, who had one bad start. And that horse to go off 2-1, and unsurprisingly, I think beat one horse in the race. I guess it's one of those situations, horse on the outside, where if it won, people like me would have screamed and said, how did they know? Because they made a horse 2-1 that could have been 10-1 or more in that race. I mean, to think that horse had done absolutely nothing and gotten a 41 Beyer in its debut, and there was a race packed with horses with, at least reasonable pedigrees, expensive purchase prices, solid trainers and connections, and for some reason to have bet a horse that it was hard to believe that there weren't going to be 2 or 3, if not many, that were better than the Jacobson horse. Why that horse was 2-1, I'll never know.
Well,
but of the firsters, the one who was bet was the one who won, and the Kimmel horse took money as well. Maggie liked that, actually. I mean, she sort of nailed that race pretty well. But I don't think that anything unusual happened. It's probably a race that bears watching again. I was planning to spend my morning actually watching races again during the week.
Well,
I had not gotten unexpected calls from you.
Well, let's get some expected or unexpected calls from you about what we can look forward to today and tomorrow. Of course, the Jimmy Wingfield, the feature tomorrow. Today, the New York Breds. You mentioned Saratoga Snacks opting for this spot, but there's a couple of horses in here absolutely viable that should make this race pretty good, the group of 7.
Yeah, I mean, Saratoga Snacks, you do have to sort of wonder a little bit with him, the way that, to not want to run in yesterday's race, to run in here, is certainly no vote of confidence for him whatsoever. Now, obviously, given how fast the race came yesterday, they made the right choice because he wasn't going to win or even be second in that race. Whether or not he's going to win today remains to be seen. I mean, I suppose he's the horse to beat in here. He has the best races, but I think he's a little bit vulnerable. He's got to deal with Commandante, who's a new horse outside of him early, and there are closers in here, and particularly Zevo, I think, is really improving for Chad Brown. It's a sort of typical Chad Brown type horse that gets better and better with each start, and he was a hard luck loser when he finished behind Awesome Vision in a race that catered to both of their closing talents. But that was 2 back. But last time out, he made a very, very significant run to get it done, albeit in a race that probably suited also his closing tactics. But I don't think that. I think there's going to be at least a fair pace in this race. I don't think Saratoga Snacks can let Commandante loaf along in the lead, but you never really know. Seems to be one or the other. Either they go too slow or too fast around here.
Let's also talk for a minute about tomorrow and about the 3-year-olds that are going to go 6 in the Jimmy Wingfield. And as I mentioned, when I looked at Santa Anita and Gulfstream and everywhere else that's running tomorrow on the Martin Luther King. Well, I have been. And
well, with that coffee, you really had to.
Exactly. I had to put the outlet somewhere. And you've got the best-looking card tomorrow, a couple of good allowances and maiden race, and then, of course, the Wingfield.
Yeah, no, I thought the Jimmy Wingfield came up to be a really interesting race. I mean, you've got an 8-horse field and horses coming from all over the place. A lot of shippers. I think shippers very much dominate this race, but the horse that I'm interested in there is a horse named Alex Inc. I don't think you're going to get the 10-to-1 morning line on him, but you never really know, and these are tough races to read. His trainer came up in another 2-year-old race we had just last week, the Ruthless, I think, or not the Ruthless, the 3-year-old race that Kieran McLaughlin won, and his horse lost a tough photo to Kieran's horse. But Alex Inc. is the kind of horse that could really have a chance to move forward. If you watch the replay of his last race, I mean, he stumbled fairly badly at the start, actually, and dropped back about a length and a half, and just really facilely moved up to the lead. And I thought he was relatively impressive in victory. I mean, obviously, this is a much, much tougher spot than he was in last time. So whether or not can beat these horses remains to be seen, but I thought he was a very dangerous horse in here.
Well, and there's a little bit of everything. I guess I Love Lulu is going to be the speed down inside, but after that, this thing, there'll be a lot of horses grappling. I thought this was a terrific group, and as you say, they're coming in from Laurel, and you got Jersey connections and Philadelphia connections. You mentioned Butchie Reed. This should be a lot of fun. And there's
Butchie? Do you call Butchie to his name?
Absolutely.
His face? Really?
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll see him and I'll say, "Hey, Steve, mentioned I should call you Butchie."
And he'll say, "Fine."
Is that a big nickname?
And no, it's not. And you can call his wife Ginny. How about
hey, Seth, you still alive?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Making sure.
I'm making notes on what to call people.
I looked at him. I said, "You want to go?" And he said, "No." So I kept going.
Okay. Yes, you did.
All right, Seth, go ahead.
I've got nothing. Like I say.
There you go.
How could you have anything? You're overwhelmed. I thought Oliver Zip in the Wingfield was also okay. I mean, he's a sort of logical horse. There's nothing wrong with his second-place finisher behind Extra Sexy Zip Hipster, who obviously was impressive in winning that last race. But if you notice, Alex Inc. had finished second, Extra Sexy Hipster, in the maiden race. I think he's a dangerous horse. I do not think you're going to get that 12-to-1 morning line.
And of course, Andy, we got to mention in the 6th race, starting the pick 4 tomorrow. Here's Sally's Dream making what the 7th start of the year.
Yeah. She fooled me last time, and she may fool me again, but she won't be getting my money. But she ran okay last time. I don't know how strong that field was last time. I think this is a tougher spot. I'm interested in Bella Gancy a little bit off the claim for Rudy Rodriguez. I think that's a dangerous horse coming off the claim. And, Lunar Surge is coming back off short rest, having won here just the other day. I'll have you like Kara's Match Point. I'm a little dubious of her stretching out. I'm not sold on her.
Well,
I don't think she's got particularly good rides in her last 2 races, but I don't know.
Now,
We'll see.
This is the reason you look top to bottom. There's a good pick 5, and if there happens to be a carryover into tomorrow, it's a great group of 6 races. If there's a pick 6 to go after, and the feature, the Wingfield. Andy, we'll be watching shortly when you commence the Sunday action, and I appreciate the visit.
Oh, I love talking to you guys anytime, especially you, Seth. It was really great.
I'm going to come blow.
Got to do this more often. Give me a call tonight.
Andy Serling, everybody, the one and only. Follow him on Twitter at just Andy Serling. We're going to take a break. We'll follow him up with Jay Privman. Let's step away. Our last break of the morning. The Daily Racing Forum's Jay Privman when we come back.
I'm Brian Nadeau, inviting you to join me Friday, January 24th at the Clubhouse Racebook. I'll be handicapping the day's races live and managing a $500 bankroll for 25 lucky patrons. We'll see you then. Let's win together.
I'm Seth Merrill. Join me weekdays at 10 for Racing Across America. We'll look at important races from around the country, get insight from top handicappers and analysts, and preview the upcoming week in racing. That's Racing Across America, weekdays at 10, right here on the OTB TV network.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer. When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night school in the buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrill and Steve Bicken. You're happy to be joined now by Jay Privman from the Daily Racing Forum. Good morning, Jay.
Good morning, Seth. How are you?
Very good. And we were noting during the break you were down in Florida over the past few days and covering the Eclipse Awards. Give us a little overview of what the night was like. Obviously, pretty much the awards played out the way everybody expected. Was there anything at the event itself that was notable?
Yeah, I thought there were a few things that were notable. I mean, obviously the speech of Willis Horton was fairly entertaining. I think everybody got a good kick out of that. And Wayne Lucas's speech when he received the Eclipse Award of Merit was enjoyable as well. And I think people saw a side of Todd Pletcher that those of us who know him know is there, but that he doesn't often let out in public, both in terms of his humor when he made a crack about Willis Horton helping those who were missing seeing Duck Dynasty last night, and also, you saw the emotional side of him when he was talking about his parents and about K-Show Electronica. So those to me were some of the things from last night that were the kind of the fun takeaways or the memorable takeaways anyway.
And what's the crowd like at that event? Is it a good, I mean, like a packed facility? And are there fans showing up as opposed to just tables with the folks who are up for the awards?
I mean, yes, to your latter question, there are fans there. It's kind of a steep throw for them. I mean, it's $400. Yeah. So you don't get very many fans. But one thing that Gulfstream's done is that they now have a Friday night party in the paddock that a lot of people attend, so you get some added value out of being able to go to that. But by and large, the people who are there are obviously from the industry and are people who are up for the Eclipse Awards that night and are just sort of anxiously hoping that their name gets called.
Well, and Jay, in addition, of course, one of the notable things, and I think I saw you tweet about this a little bit, is how many horses actually coming out of the awards. Again, we're seeing so many fan favorites and champions return for a campaign this year.
Yeah, I think that was one of the neat things about what's gone on in the sport in the last few years, is that you have horses that are sticking around a little longer and extending their careers, and a number of the horses who won awards last night are, including the 3 horses who were up for Horse of the Year, with Wise Dan, or the finalist for Horse of the Year, I should say. Wise Dan, who won it again, Will Take Charge, and Mucho Macho Man are all going to race throughout this year. We already saw, obviously, Mucho Macho Man come back and win that glorified workout yesterday and get paid for it. But, you know, you've got the 2-year-olds obviously stay on, Shared Belief and She's a Tiger. Will Take Charge, the champion 3-year-old colt, Beholder, the champion 3-year-old filly. They all stay in training. And Groupie Doll is going to make one more start before she goes to the breeding shed. And the female turf winner, Dank, who's based in Europe, but her owner last night said that they want to be able to come back and run in the same 2 races this year that they ran in last year, the Beverly D and then the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf. So it's nice to see all those horses staying in training.
Got to mention, Jay, too, you mentioned Caixa Electronica, one of the other emotional portions of the evening. Have to talk about Tim Yakteen. So sweet to see points off the bench and the connections rewarded, kind of fulfilling what he couldn't and wasn't allowed to fulfill on track.
I think he was a deserving winner as champion sprinter. I mean, I think he was the best sprinter in the country last year, and it was just awful what happened in his final work the weekend before the Breeders' Cup was to be run, and in which he would have been the favorite in the sprint. And it was, I thought, it showed the side of Tim Yakteen that those of us who deal with him on a regular basis in California know he's a nice guy, and I think there was a lot of outpouring of emotion towards he and the rest of his team when that horse had his fatal breakdown, and I think he just wanted to publicly acknowledge that, and that's what he did. It was a nice moment.
Jay, I want to ask you one other question, and you can tie in both Wise Dan coming back again this year, of course, and the potential for him to, based on what Charlie Lopresti and Mr. Fink had to say, a chance that maybe the campaign, I don't want to say more ambitious, but more diverse. At the same time, also, what's your feeling on the older male division as a moniker, and is there room in this system to make it more identified as a dirt category?
All right, let me try and answer those 3 questions in chronological order of asked. I mean, it does seem as though Morton Fink would like to see the horse run long on dirt. Those are the words that he used last night. And obviously, you could tell from the way he said it that it's something that's been discussed often with his trainer, Charlie Lopresti. So, and, look, he's been Horse of the Year twice now. It's like, why not be a little more ambitious with him this year if he's up for it? I mean, the horse always has to come first. In terms of the voting for older male, I mean, I understand why people voted for Wise Dan, but by my way of looking at it, I mean, you only sort of lean towards a grass horse. The grass horses have a division, and to me, you would only lean towards a grass horse if there aren't viable dirt candidates. And I think a year ago, there really weren't, and I didn't have as big a problem with it. This year, though, I mean, you had Mucho Macho Man, who did have a brief but very successful campaign, including a Breeders' Cup win where he beat the champion 3-year-old colt and Will Take Charge. And then you have Game On Dude, who, granted, ran a horrible race in the Breeders' Cup, but I think to just ignore his 3 wins plus in the Sanity of the Handicap, the Hollywood Gold Cup, and the Pacific Classic, plus a ship and win. He shipped into Charlestown and won the race there. And then he finished the year off by finishing second in the Clark to Will Take Charge, who was a champion himself. So it wasn't like he had an awful year. And it just seemed to me like that was overlooked. And the other thing, Steve, that I just find incongruous is there was a real rush to vote for Wise Dan in that older male division, and people seem to think that was just perfectly fine, and yet Dank didn't receive the same sort of sympathy in terms of older female, which Royal Delta won, and Dank won female turf, which he should have won. And I'm not advocating for Dank here, but I don't know how the inconsistency of voters is what I find just difficult to understand. I mean, I don't know how you can make a case for Wise Dan as older male and then dismiss Dank for older female, especially in the year last year for older female, where you could have made, I think, a case if you were so inclined to reward a grass female because that division just really didn't have a strong year. I mean, even though Royal Delta won, she certainly wasn't at her best of what we had seen in her two prior seasons.
That's a fair point, and I'm just looking up, Jay. I looked up the older female. There were 5 first-place votes for Dank, and then there were 19 second-place votes for Dank as older female, and 5 third-place votes. So there was just a little bit, a smattering of that. Very interesting. And Laughing got 1 first-place vote as an older female. Interesting that they and Dance to Bristol received at least 1 first-place vote as older female, Jay, but Authenticity got none. Back to that.
Well, she didn't deserve to get a first-place vote, but, I mean, she deserved to be a finalist. She should have gotten a lot of second- and third-place votes.
She didn't get those either.
Right, I know. Well, as we've discussed on your radio show, it would help if she was on the ballot.
Jay, one other topic, too, before we ask about what you're seeing from the 3-year-olds preparing for the Holy Bull as the Derby watch starts to loom larger on the horizon, and that was in the jockey, and you had a very specific and pointed opinion on the jockey side of things, and Stevens and Rosario take a backseat to Castellano, who ended up actually winning pretty much by acclamation.
Well, it just seemed to me like in terms of trainer, jockey, owner, breeder, and apprentice jockey, voters just looked at, okay, who won the most money, I'll vote for them. Now, in some cases, that's a good measure of who did well, but to me, you need to dig a little deeper and look at who won Grade 1 races and who won championships. And so Ken and Sarah Ramsey had a brilliant year, and the sire Kitten's Joy was remarkable, and so to me, it kind of stacked up for them to be owner or certainly breeder with the success of Kitten's Joy. And, Todd Fletcher had won more Grade 1 races than any trainer in the country, but he won more money, so I could see voting for him. But, I have full admiration for Javier Castellano. I think he's a great person. I think he's a terrific rider. But last year he won a whole lot of money, but he didn't win a whole lot of big races. He only won 4 Grade 1s compared to Mike Smith, who didn't even make the top 3 for finalists last night, who won 16 and Grade 1s, and Gary Stevenson won 14 Grade 1s, and including multiple Breeders' Cup races and a Triple Crown race, as did Mike Smith. And so I just found that to not be as smart a vote in my mind as others did. It just seemed like it was almost robotic how some people voted this year, and I think you need to dig a little deeper than just look at a table. It's almost this is a flipped comparison. I don't want to demean Javier Castellano by saying this, but it's almost like saying, well, McDonald's sells the most hamburgers, so they're the best burger. I mean, not really.
Well put out. That's well reasoned. Jay, before we wrap up, I got to ask you, you were watching the workers this morning, an important morning actually that is going to send out a number of starters in the Holy Bull. Give us some overall impressions.
Well, to me, the most significant thing from the morning was the workout of Coup de Gras. John Velasquez was out here and worked him and is going to ride him in the Holy Bull next week, which is coming up a sensational field. Cairo Prince also worked well this morning for it. Almost Famous worked for it this morning. So, I mean, and there's a number of other horses who are going to be competing in the race. So, it's going to be a full field, and it's only a mile and a 16th. So you've got there's an abbreviated run to the first turn regardless. It's Gulfstream, and then you've got now the short stretch with the race being a mile and a 16th. So it's the draw for that race is going to be very, very important. But it's coming up a good race, and I thought Coup de Gras worked very well this morning, and Cairo Prince looked super as well. So I haven't seen all of them train, but they certainly look like they're coming into the race the right way.
You mentioned Almost Famous as well, and then even slipped in a Sam Davis starter with Harpoon.
Right, I saw Harpoon work, and I liked his work a lot. The time was slow, but I just liked the way he did it. He went in company. He was much the best over his workmate, and he finished well, and he galloped out really strong. And he just looked like he could have gone a lot faster at any time. And that's, to me, when I watch works, I don't time them. I just want to see how they're going, then I'll look at the time later. Because to me, it's not how fast they're going; it's how they look doing it. And I like to see horses who are just going well within themselves. And so to me, I'd rather see a horse go in 1, 2, and 4 under a pole than a minute flat and with the rider whipping and driving on him.
That's the Tony Black line, Jay. It's not how fast they're going; it's how they're going fast.
It's a well-worn racetrack cliche.
Always
appropriate.
As is Tony Black.
Tony's a good man.
He's the greatest. He's 62 years old and still taking calls. Jay, thanks so much, and obviously going to be a fun lead-up week. And it seems like we can now put 2013 in the steamer trunk and put it in the attic or in that big room in Raiders of the Lost Ark with the other artifacts.
Sounds like a plan.
I love it. Jay Privman, everybody. And, of course, on Twitter, DRF Privman. The Derby Watch takes over precedent now. Jay going to be there for the Holy Bull. Always fun to check in with Jay.
Yeah, and tomorrow we didn't mention Smarty Jones at Oaklawn.
Yes.
The Triple Crown Trail is underway. We didn't mention the Lecomte. We mentioned it, didn't mention the winner, though. Vickers in trouble. Ken Ramsey, Louisiana bred, coming out of the Louisiana bred race. Won it pretty easily. My Gold Hawk
crushed them.
Yeah, my
He
Gold
absolutely
Hawk runs third, and absolutely. So.
That was significant because he was stretching out. And okay, granted, here it is. Look, good job. Just watch this, and this is not a kitten's joy. It's an Into Mischief, and blah. This one is just galloping away.
And that's my Gold Hawk on the outside there, and he
ran
can't
okay.
even get by for
It
second.
was all right.
I want to
wasn't
see
terrible.
one more race before I make a decision from both the second and the third.
No, don't. In fact, Marcus Hirsch said that he said he wouldn't give up on Gold Hawk just yet. There was also that Albano who was dead on the board, but who ran okay.
Yeah,
that was
the second place
Albano that
finish.
was second.
And the price was very surprising. That's a sibling to Mark Valesky.
Yeah, and took no money. I mean, Larry Jones and Brereton Jones. And then, of course, Larry Jones and Brereton Jones with the filly Divine Beauty that ended up running second just could not get ahead of the Lemons Forever baby. And got to mention, I'm going to quickly forget, Unbridled Forever is her name, the Lemons Forever daughter. And Dallas Stewart going to percolate through the Rachel Alexandra and work his way to the Fairground Oaks and then back to his home base at Churchill. Dallas, big designs, I think, with the Charlie Fipke homebred. Unbridled Forever. She looked tremendous.
3-year-olds starting to attract our attention both on the boys and the girls side. All right, that wraps up Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. Questions, comments, or suggestions, let us know at looseonthelead@yahoo.com. We would love to hear from you. Seth Merrill, Equidaily.com. Steve Bick of Sirius and XM's At the Races. We'll wrap things up. We're in here every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. We'll see you next week.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.